So now that we are ready to go, President Cox, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Terry Carell Reed, very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Shullette Cox, and I am the president of JAMPRO. I do want to join with everyone that came before me to welcome you all to Jamaica and to outsource to LAC. Jamaica Promotions Corporation, or JAMPRO, is Jamaica's export and investment promotions agency. And over the next half an hour, I'm joined by my two panelists that represent both the public and private sector perspective on Jamaica's global digital services industry. And we will talk a little bit about the journey that Jamaica has had to capitalize on the growing and evolving that has been happening globally into knowledge process outsourcing space, and focusing on education and digital transformation to build a knowledge-based society. So, despite being on both sides of the discussion this morning, both of my panelists are alumni of the Harvard Business School, and so are very grounded in a mindset of innovation and entrepreneurship. The first is my Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, and he's been our minister since January 2022, and he chairs the Global Digital Services Task Force in Jamaica, which was established in 2022 by Cabinet to implement Jamaica's 5-year development plan for the industry. So welcome, Minister Hill. The second speaker, Mr. Anand Biradar, by day is the head of the delivery for the Americas at Sagility, overseeing operations in Jamaica, US, and Colombia, but he has been a leading outsourcing CEO in Jamaica over the last decade. He's passionate about entrepreneurship and sits on the board of several startup tech companies in Jamaica. And whatever hours are left out of his busy day, he's also the president of Jamaica's Global Services Association for just over a year. And as the Prime Minister mentioned earlier, that association is a major advocacy body for Jamaica's local industry. So to give us a little context of why we're here today and what we're talking about, Jamaica's global services industry started just over 2 decades ago. And it started mainly in the basic work in business process outsourcing. In 2011, Jamaica had about 11,000 employees, and today we have over 60,000 employees. That's a 15% average growth rate in a period of time where we had a global recession and a global pandemic, and I think that's to be applauded. A lot of that can be attributed to very deliberate actions on the part of the government that has come through and been guided by private sector consultation. In 2020, the country fully implemented its first 5-year development plan for the industry and grew the industry in 4 years from 14,000 to 43,000. And as I mentioned, last year a new plan was approved. A major part of Jamaica's plan has been focused on upskilling and upgrading the experiences of Jamaican people, focusing in more recent years on certification and apprenticeship. As Jamaica enters the new era of digital transformation, and we heard Carolina talk about it, it's an era that we will probably not leave because digital transformation never ends. It's important that public and private partnerships are aligned so that we are happy that we have these two persons talking to us today. And I'm going to start with Minister Hill. So the Prime Minister mentioned that during the 3 years of the pandemic, we grew 30%. And I know that that has come out of a lot of work that has been put in by the government, deliberate work. How has the government supported that growth over the last few years?
Well, hello, Mr. Mike. one of the first things that the government did, Shullette, as you will recall, is to make sure we designated the outsourcing sector as one of those sectors that was an essential service. In other words, you have to go to the shop to get food, you have to go to the health center to get health care. We said, if we're going to continue, we're going to have to make the global outsourcing sector an essential service. In addition to that, we instituted very, very early work from home. So while the economy took a 10.1% dip in GDP during the pandemic and then grew back very quickly in 21, 22 at 8.1%, so it was a V curve. What happened to the global services sector, and what I now call, went back to cabinet and had it redesignated and rearranged to have it called the global digital services sector, because you're not going anywhere unless all our young people are digitally literate and good. When we did that, we made sure that we were certifying people. We make sure they had work from home, and the industry, that sector of the industry, just continued to grow through that period of time. Government was also very available. At the time, I was not minister here. I was a minister in the Prime Minister's office, and I used to take calls from many people all over the world who had businesses in Jamaica and were thinking that they would face particular difficulties, and we had to address them. So government became very, very available to people. The reason why that industry continued to grow are some basically fundamental ones. Prime Minister mentioned some of them this morning, but one of them is very simply, ladies and gentlemen, you have to run your country properly. Before 2016, when Prime Minister Andrew Holness took over, and a period before that, we had to make some serious adjustments starting in 2013 to make sure we put our country on a good fiscal footing. Well, since we came to power, we made sure we continued with that fiscal discipline. In fact, we started it before we came to power. The Prime Minister mentioned that in these past 6-7 years, we haven't raised taxes. That began with a program that I'm very familiar with, because I was working with the Prime Minister on it when he was in opposition, whereby we said anybody who earned 1.5 million Jamaican dollars or less would not get any taxes, would not pay any income taxes. Well, we haven't raised taxes from 2016. That's running your country well. We also have made sure that very early in the game, we changed the rules for the central bank, where the central bank would focus on managing inflation long before inflation was an issue. We were well within our inflationary target those years, but we changed the law. It was a big kerfuffle in the country where they said, oh, you're not focusing on managing the exchange rate. We said, no, we're not going to manage the exchange rate. We're going to make sure that if you take your money to the bank, you take your clean money to the bank, you can buy any amount of hard currencies you want, but you will have to pay the price depending on where the currency is. So we made sure that we had no currency restrictions. You can still go into the bank. You don't have to know the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, or me, or the bank manager. You have your money in the bank. You want to buy hard currency. It's easily interchangeable, and it's a very big plus when investors are looking to invest in a place. And finally, the legal system. Prime Minister touched on it briefly. But we have a legal system that is independent. If you ever want to know how much power a politician doesn't have, let them try and touch the judiciary. Very quickly, all 4 feet are down your throat. So we're very careful that we keep a very strong judiciary with respect from the legislature and the executive. And our judicial system still goes up to the Privy Council in England, and that provides a great deal of comfort for many investors. Clearly, we have the people, they're young, they're going to train, 1.5 million of them speaking English in one contiguous area in the Kingston and Portmore area, the biggest population of English speakers with young people outside of the United States. So Jamaica really is truly a very attractive investment destination, and that's how we kept the global digital services, the outsourcing business growing during a very difficult time for the world and for the country.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now, over that period of time as well, just before the pandemic, the government of Jamaica, partnering with the IDB, launched the Global Digital Services Sector Project, which is focused on skills development and ecosystem creation for the industry. Anand, as a recipient of some of the outcomes to date of that project, and in addition to some of what Minister mentioned, how would you say the private sector has received that support from the government, and what is the impact that it has had on either or both your company and the industry, looking at it from the association's perspective?
Great question. And I've been here for a while and worked very closely with the government and the minister. And I've worked in 5, 6 different countries and made Jamaica my home. And I run the Americas operation from here. And I have to say, it's been the difference in working with government is a lot more easier here. And I will give some examples. The investments made in Global Services Skills program funded by IDB, and the Special Economic Zone policies as well, and other treating outsourcing business as an emergency service during the pandemic were pivotal to solving some of the critical gaps in the growth. And we've seen fantastic growth in the last 5 years in Jamaica. And so the government and the government entities play a very critical role and a very supportive role to the private sector. And I just want to share one small story. It sort of epitomizes the way, the lengths to which the government of Jamaica can go to support a business. This was, I worked with the Hinduja Group, which had a large healthcare operation, which they sold to a private equity for a very high valuation. And that was it's a $1.2 billion deal. And going by the books, it would take probably 4 or 5 months to complete all the paperwork and get through the process. And we had 8 weeks to close the deal. And Minister Hill was instrumental in making it happen. It's shockingly, it's a shocking experience for the private equity. It's a $38 billion private equity, very large, reputable private equity, and even the Hinduja Group in this case. So it took Minister Hill and Bobby Honeygan, who works with the minister, and Prime Minister of Jamaica, to sign the document on the eve of Christmas, and it was a weekend. That won't happen in any country. That will not happen in any country. So that's the amount of commitment the government brings in supporting the private sector and working very closely with the private sector. I hope that really makes the statement, which is a fact.
All right, thank you, Anand. And I think that just emphasizes how accessible, as the minister said, government officials at all levels are willing and ready and able to support not just this industry, all industries, but we're talking about this industry today. So I can't even count the amount of times we've said skills development since this morning. And it emphasizes that we see that education and skills are critical to this industry, as it is only as successful as the people. I think one of our previous speakers spoke to the fact that when you think about digital transformation, it rests with both infrastructure and people. And as people are one of our greatest assets here in Jamaica, I want to ask you, Minister Hill, as a country, where and within the context of moving into a knowledge-based society and moving into a different and higher level for digital services that is based on more knowledge industries and IT and technology, where do we need to focus on educating our workforce in order to take that leap into the areas of digital services?
I'm not supposed to say what happens in Cabinet, but I think I can get away with this. Cabinet has made it very clear to the Ministry of Education, who herself is a graduate of Harvard and Wharton Business School. Harvard College, where she did her first degree, and Wharton Business School. So she understands, Minister Williams does, the necessity for really good education. So Cabinet is very clear, but Cabinet is clear in the allocation of money. The Ministry of Education gets 140 billion Jamaican dollars to run its ministry this year. It's second only to the Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance is naturally the biggest recipient of Jamaican tax dollars to spend because they pay the loans and pay the interest. So we, as a government, again, is very clear that since we do not have the landmass of China, the United States, Canada, or Russia, we don't have the minerals of Russia or Canada, we are never going to have those minerals. We're an island, so there's no place to invade. So we have to make sure we train our people very, very well as we get into this era when skills are what will drive your economy. And if you don't believe it, look at Singapore, Israel, and Japan. They don't have many minerals themselves. So we very well recognize that, and Estonia and Latvia and Europe, they're small countries too. We have to make sure we're training them well. We have been doing that. When I came to the ministry, one of the first things I changed is that we had a $15 million loan from IDB. And let me tell you something. This minister goes everywhere like an ambassador and an advertiser for IDB. When we were in the toughest positions that we could be in, the multilateral that really stood up for us, clearly, others did, they worked through programs with us, but in real raw cash, IDB has been there for us. And they arranged for us to have this $15 million loan. When I came, I saw training. It didn't have certification. So took it from Shullette, took it back to Cabinet, and said training and certification. Because when I came back to Jamaica from working many years overseas, one of the first articles I wrote is that we should train Jamaicans and put on every one of their foreheads fit for export. Why? Not because I want them to leave, but if we're going to put them fit for export, we have to train them to that caliber. So we're now at a place where we don't have to export them. They're working. Anand has, I just opened another place for Anand last week where he has another 1,200 seats, and I'm opening another bunch next week. People are coming in to make sure the Jamaicans we train stay here and work rather than just go overseas. So what we're training on, I remember that Germany didn't become the powerhouse of exports and the powerhouse economy in Europe through PhDs and lawyers. It was really through apprentices. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, BASF, all the chemical companies hired people who are trained, yes, technically high, but with skills. So we're looking to train apprentices at a high level. Healthcare. He's in the healthcare processing business in the outsourcing sector. He needs people that understand that business. We need them to be trained in these particular skills. So we're not only just training and certifying, we're now, the Prime Minister has repurposed heart to make sure on the new Minister, Dixon, that he mentioned, Dr. Dixon this morning, to make sure we train them to have the digital skills that will be absolutely necessary. One-year-old kids are using their phones. They're not using any books anymore. So we have to train our people in that, and we're very focused, and we commit the money to it. Remember, I started off with $140 billion Jamaican dollars, the biggest budget going into education.
Thank you, Minister. And congrats again, Anand, for the opening of that facility last week, which is your 5th facility in Jamaica. And that speaks a lot about the confidence that Shullette and your clients have. As you are constantly thinking about growth and development, and as we think about this digital transformation, what is your approach as Shullette to talent development? And how is that made easier by some of the foundational skills that you've been able to find in your employees in Jamaica?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. And so briefly, Shullette is a very specialized global provider of services to U.S. healthcare industry. We do an umbrella of services out of 5 countries, including Jamaica. And these are extremely complex cases. The ones we handle in Jamaica are where our employees interact with patients, doctors, nurses, over a range of things. To understand U.S. healthcare, if you know, it's very complicated. It's a 16-week training at minimum. So why Jamaica is successful is because the IQ levels compare with all other countries is higher in Jamaica, and the ability to comprehend complex subjects. And these are not, we're not hiring masters or college grads. These are, students who have done their high school, who are doing their college, but they're just outright brilliant in their ability to comprehend complex subjects. And top it all with, the clear communication skill. It's very important when you're talking on healthcare subject to understand and articulate in a very clear, concise manner with accuracy, because you're dealing with patient information and all of that. So Jamaica has done really well, right? Which is why it's very successful here. And the programs put in place internally, we have very large training and development organization where we've planned level 1 to level 10 growth for every employee across all services. And we're looking to open up licensed pharmacists out of Jamaica. We're looking to open up licensed nurses out of Jamaica. And I also have Madan, who's the CEO of Shullette Technologies, who's here. He leads the team that develops front-end technology for healthcare industry. He has a team of 100+ data scientists, researchers, software engineers, and developers in Atlanta and in India. And I'm telling him, come Jamaica and grow here. So he's here really to evaluate and extend his tech team. So that's the value growth forward. And this is the plan for employees, right? You want to invest in them. You want to bring the best out of them. And eventually, all the stakeholders benefit, the country, the people, the employees themselves.
All right, thank you for that, Anand. And it's always so heartening when we realize that not only the government has to sell Jamaica, but we have partners in our private sector that also, you guys do a pretty good job as well. So Minister Hill, Prime Minister spoke this morning about a couple of things that the government is doing in terms of kind of starting this digital transformation journey. I know in 2020 we passed our Data Protection Act, and we're on the way to operationalizing that. We spoke several times about the new minister, which it is no coincidence that she is both skills development and digital transformation. But are there any other initiatives you'd want to emphasize as to what that journey is looking like for Jamaica?
Well, the government is, as I said, spending a lot of money. I gave you a big budget number, but also, as you link down, we look at the $15 million US dollars we borrowed from IDB to train, because that's an investment. And we will continue to do that through HEART. We're going to take, for many of you who don't know this, 70% of the graduates from universities in Jamaica are women. So when the issue comes up of gender equality in terms of work, Colombia and Jamaica are right at the top, but I know we have many friends here from Colombia. Give them a round of applause because they're generally right up there in the top in terms of women running things. And as you can see, if you look around Jamaica enough, you see 5 men. The rest is run by women. So, but the reason why I'm telling you that is we have about 300 or 400,000 young men who did not matriculate in the same kind of percentages that the young women have. They're on the streets. They become sometimes the material that criminals tend to engage in their activities. We are now looking at HEART, and the Prime Minister has just put on the board of HEART the immediate past head of the Jamaica Defense Force. So we're going to take many of those young men, put them in training camps. We're going to pay them a stipend, give them discipline, make sure they have apprenticeship skills certified when they come out. Nobody getting out unless you're certified. And therefore, we're making sure that we go to that other level, especially as we're between the 6.5%, 6 to 7% unemployment rate, which is in an emerging market, is really close to full employment. People can't find people to, so we're going to train these people and make sure they come into the workforce, expanding the workforce in that manner. But I also, I'm taking this platform, as I do often, to say to my business partners who know that I simply work for them, because I know it is they who pay the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, me, Shullette, everybody who works in government. The taxes come from the income tax of business and the customs duty we charge them and so on. But businesses too must step up. I'm listening to Anand, and 16 weeks is what he invests to make sure, and I can say this because this week, I think I can say this, Anand, you can ask me to withdraw it afterwards. Humana was here because when I went to open, Humana was there. Humana is at the top of the health services game. So he has to train people to take care of that. Businesses in Jamaica I would want to see, I've been on many, many boards in this country before I came into government. And there's no line there that says an expense line, an investment line that says training or employees to the next higher level and in STEM or whatever you want to train them in. So I'm saying to businesses as well that as the government invests so much of taxpayers' money, businesses must also step up to the plate and join that exercise as German, Israeli, Singaporean, Latvian businesses have done.
Thank you, Minister, and that's a good segue to my...
Yes, I agree. Yes, please raise it, let them hear.
And that's a good segue to my question to Anand. And I know what we've seen happening in Jamaica with a lot of the outsourcing companies, a lot of the tech companies have created their own company culture, like a subset of the industry. And how would you say that companies such as Shullette are ensuring that they're future-proofing Jamaica within the context of digital transformation? What are some of the things that you are doing, as the Minister just suggested?
Yeah, thanks, Shullette. And I think there's at least one of the good things that came out of COVID was people really went back to the drawing board and reimagining how the future of work will be and what all can possibly happen that one needs to have a playbook for, right? And as we think Shullette is dedicated in the healthcare space and widely so, focused on the US healthcare. And so as we invest in employees and enhance their economic independence deeper and better with the opportunities we can, we're moving Jamaica slowly up the value chain, right? So I'll give a couple of examples. And I talked about the training earlier. The training and knowledge center of excellence for Shullette for the Americas region is in Jamaica. So we have at least 30, 40 trainers in Jamaica who train all the classes for America and Colombia. So that's the expertise gained, that's the knowledge, deep knowledge gained. So slowly but surely, internally, the path to create more value is done for all employees. That's one. And second would be, the flexibility, right? Flexibility was something, sort of a premium before the gig economy, right? But now, I think flexibility is something every organization has to give to their employees in one way or the other. I think that is very important, and there's a lot of intellectual power and money going in creating the flexible working spaces. And if you saw our new site, it's fundamentally redesigned differently, if you recall. And so, yeah, redesigning.
Listen, if you have the chance, just go take a look at the place where they have just outside Spanish Town in what used to be the Aragonabo Center. It's fantastic. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it.
Yeah, so redesigning workspaces to better, for a better employment experience, and continuous investment in talent, right? And it's a lot more easier when you have, government that supports JAMPRO, it's a lot more easier to get things done and focus on talent. Now, partnering with Minister Dixon, we're going to move that agenda forward and doubling down and putting Jamaica on the path of higher value services. And I just want to say one last thing that, for all the investors looking at Jamaica, I would say doing business in Jamaica is more like taking a cat jump. You always land on your feet. So, cool, thanks.
Thank you for that, Anand. So my last question, I'm going to ask you both 2-sentence answers. As Jamaica moves purposefully into a knowledge-based industry, where do you see us in another 3 to 5 years? And what role do you see this industry having on the economy of Jamaica? Start with you, Anand.
I would see the path for Jamaica, to me, is very clear, and I know a few others with me can see this very clearly the next 5-10 years. It will be the path of creating high-value services out of Jamaica, more ITO, more KPO, more high-value services, while the BPO also strengthens and doubles up in its count. So that's the future. Scale, if you compare Philippines, India, and other large outsourcing destinations, they play at scale. I think Jamaica will play at the not the quantum, but the qualitative output that the country can deliver through a series of high-value services. So that's the path forward for Jamaica. I see that happening for sure. It's inevitable in the next 5-10 years span.
I personally believe that the BPO sector, the global digital services sector, will continue to grow. Yes, upskilling itself, especially as the demands from their clients grow. But I also want to see that the government will digitize. We will make sure we digitize Jamaica. And if we were to focus on cybersecurity, I think that's a place that we're going to have to grow. I remember 30 years ago now, Singapore said, we're going to decide on one part of the plane. And which plane are we going to pick? The 747. It carries most people. And they didn't pick the tires, they didn't pick the wings, they didn't pick the fuselage, they picked the avionics in the nose. And when Singapore decided to do that, people laughed at them. Just like they laughed at Sheikh Mohammed, I'm going to turn Dubai into a capital city of the world. It's a desert, what do you mean? So, Mr. Prime Minister Lee Kuan, you went down that road, and in 10 or so years, every single 747 plane in the world that had to check its avionics went to Singapore. Now, Israel, last year, I think, got $7 billion of inward investment in cybersecurity. It makes sense. They've developed that over the years. We can decide that we have to pick an area, and if I were to pick one, I know lots of cybersecurity people are here. And I'm very interested that you are here, because as we reskill our young people, and we take them out of the STEM subjects into the cyber and the ICT space, we need to pick an area, and one of them has to be cybersecurity. And I'm just going to leave by saying, many people realize that Jamaicans do understand cybersecurity. In a particular way, we want to make sure that it's channeled in a very, very productive, formative manner. And you can laugh and give me a clap, and thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this chat. I think we've heard a lot about what Jamaica has done and will be doing. I want to thank our two panelists for taking the time to share their insights and perspectives. And I want to thank you all for listening. And I invite you to continue this conversation after the panel and your interest in Jamaica. But for now, let me hand you back over to Dr. Reed. Thank you.
Can I just one? If you're a provider, if you're a merchant banker interested in, or you provide any sort of services to U.S. healthcare industry, please connect with me. We're looking at quite a few acquisition opportunities. Thank you.
One plug is allowed.
This is a business conference after all. Well done, Anand.
I mean, if you're going to make a plug like that. Ladies and gentlemen, managing that conversation as well as she did. In order to unlock the potential within any country, you have to start with the premise of no one should be left behind. Our minister reinforced that it can't just be a government thing. It has to be government, public, as well as private sector. It has to be a collective effort. And Nan said something very interesting. He says we must reimagine the future of work and the community. And even while we are upskilling and training and doing the courses and the apprenticeship, we must always be looking at what is to come and then strategically figuring out how we can corner that market. In other words, we need to level up, and it needs to be something that we invest in. I absolutely enjoyed that conversation. So we will